This is Fraud to Fearless,
where we inspire dreamers to overcome imposter syndrome, embrace their authentic selves, and learn how to harness your brand to build a path to success.
I'm Brooke.
And I'm Hayden, and we're your hosts.
Welcome to the show. What's up, fam? Welcome back to the show. I'm pumped about today because I have convinced Hayden to be interviewed today. The reason why we're doing this, or why I've convinced him to do it, is because Hayden, those of you that know him and have worked with him, you know this is going to be an amazing episode. But he has so much knowledge. If you listen to our first episode, you will know that he goes back year after year. There are not many people that get to do this, but he has been asked back year after year by the Master in Human Resources program and by his company, which is a Fortune 100 company, to go and recruit at Utah State. He is a leader and mentor to hundreds of students. This is literally his life calling. I want everybody listening to be able to really hear from start to finish this journey that he's been on and this career progression. I think it's so important. Just like in our last episode, Lindsay talked about when she was trying to figure out what she wanted to do. She was reinventing her life and thinking, okay, how old am I? Like, I feel like I need to start over. She went out and she decided to do informational interviews with all different kinds of people, what they did, just to say, okay, what do you do? And can I learn from that and see if I'm interested in it? So, Hayden, we both started in the same place and we've ended in completely different areas with a passion project in between, right? I'm excited to dive into this.
Yeah, me too.
Start us out. You talked in previous episodes a little bit about how you were in accounting before and that was your path. Then you said no to Big Four. You got into human resources. Let's start there.
Yeah. First off, there's not one right path. And I think my biggest advice, leave comparison at the door, leave ego at the door. But the intent of going through this episode is to share a little bit more of the details of what my story, my different roles, how I moved up from intern to director, what the roles were, what did I even do? And also, like, what were the big takeaways that I had on that journey? Because navigating corporate America is tough, and you don't learn about it in school, even if you get 2 graduate degrees like Brooke and I did. And every company is different, every role is different, every manager is different. And so I think by going through some of the details in particular, there's going to be hopefully a lot of nuggets for those, whether you're in corporate America and you want to stay in corporate America, or you're in corporate America and you're thinking about leaving to a small, mid-size, non-publicly traded company, or maybe you're ready for a career passion. You've heard some of our other episodes and you're thinking, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I want to go start my own business like what Brooke did. When I was in grad school where I met Brooke, the Utah State Master of HR, and then Brooke and I also got our MBA, so we did a dual master's program. But I got an internship at Honeywell, which I've talked about. That's where I work today. This was real. This was showtime. The internship was like, it's my turn. I did the informational interviews. I learned all the stuff in school. I made the relationships. And now it's like going into a grad school program. Everything was your internship. One, getting it, but then also making sure that you get an offer when you get back. And also, hopefully, it being a good fit. So if you did or didn't get an offer, if you accepted it, knowing that you're also interviewing the company. It's not just the company assessing you, you're also assessing the company. But I think one thing that I would highlight that I haven't talked about before on this pod was my manager was awesome. And now I'm in a position where, like this last summer, I had an intern work directly for me, report into me. I've, for the past 3-4 years, been the campus manager for Honeywell at Utah State. So every year I go to campus and I recruit, select, mentor and then guide when they finally get to Honeywell 2 to 5 interns every year from Utah State that come work at Honeywell. And I am very passionate about it because interns need guidance. It takes time. It takes a lot of time from leaders, and they're learning how to become that next future HR leader. And so, in my opinion, that's one of the most important things that I do in my job is mentor the next cohort of HR leaders so that we can continue to build our reputation. One, the Utah State reputation. Two, the HR community within Honeywell. But that's really important. So my manager on my internship, he was so great in mentoring me, bringing me under his wing. I had to earn his respect at the beginning, but then there was a trust there where he literally would call me in to his office and would like just let me sit in on calls and just like a Karate Kid, like wax on, wax off, just show me how he what like navigated really challenging leaders in the leaders that he supported. And then I
Okay, wait,
also
Hayden.
had, yeah, real, yeah, go.
Okay, so I'm going to set a little bit of a foundation because those that maybe aren't in the HR profession or have never heard of Honeywell and like this whole internship thing, I want to kind of lay a foundation before you dive head first. So,
Sure.
for those of you that aren't familiar with Honeywell, they do have this reputation of having very excellent HR leaders. There's kind of this competition with the different companies that come on campus. And you know that when Honeywell shows up, the big dogs are here. Like they're not messing around. There is a professionalism, a level of intelligence, and like we know what we're doing and we make an impact in the business. And you can feel it and you can see it. So the fact that Hayden was selected by this company and he briefly said it at the beginning, but from intern to director in how many years?
Like 5.5.
5.5 years. This is unheard of. Now, Honeywell, a lot of times when people hear the word Honeywell, they think of the thermostat. At least that's what I thought of, like on your in your house. Just do a quick Google search when you'll actually see how much Honeywell does. It's not just a thermostat. They have their hands in everything. This is a massive global company. This is a big fish. I have to lay that framework because that's going to give you perspective with each of these experiences that there is valuable information. You're not messing around. His internship experience was very different than mine. But we both worked for incredible, incredible companies. So I cut you off. Go back into you're working for your boss. What area of the business was this in? And like give us a little bit more context so we can kind of picture where you're at, what you're experiencing, never having HR experience before.
Yeah. My boss, he was the HR leader for our engineering organization in our business at the time called Safety and Productivity Solutions. So it was a plethora of different businesses. Think like scanners, think like productivity and automation systems in a factory, that kind of stuff. So he was the HR leader for the engineering function. My big project on my internship was actually utilizing social media to recruit software engineers.
What?
So, like if you could take yourself back to 8 years ago, social media is totally kicked off, but again, Honeywell, we have that reputation and they give the interns the meaty project. Halfway through the internship, we presented our we flew to Atlanta. They flew me and my project team down to Atlanta. We interviewed software interns. We interviewed software engineering leaders to try and understand what brought them to Honeywell and how did they hear about us on social media, right? Because we are a big company and we are largely B2B. So a lot of folks don't necessarily know a ton about Honeywell
B2B
unless you've
is business to
business to
business.
business. Yeah, good. Um, and so So halfway through the internship, we made recommendations and we flew to Morris Plains, where our headquarters was at the time, and presented them to our chief human resource officer, so the HR leader for the company, and his HR leadership team in the boardroom at headquarters. It was
This
a
is
really great
the
experience.
CHRO. Was it for the whole company?
Whole company. Yeah.
Like worldwide, company wise, you're
Worldwide.
presenting to the top guy
That's right. We
in
also had a
HR.
one-on-one on my internship too. So I just full sent the invite and we had a one-on-one, and he's great, was a big leader and mentor, for me, and a great example. It's not just a 12-week thing where no one's going to remember your name. Like, I literally had a one-on-one with the top HR leader in the whole company and presented to him and his leadership team. So that was my internship. And then we went back to school after the internship, finished up our second year in the program, and then I entered the leadership development program. So my first role,
You got an
they,
offer. They said
yeah.
we loved you on the internship and now we want to bring you on full time. Did you know what you were accepting, or you're just like, I got it. I'm accepting.
When I got the offer, I knew I was going to accept. Yeah. It
You
was a
like the
no-brainer for
culture,
me. Yeah,
and it wasn't, you weren't agreeing to a particular role. You were agreeing to something called a leadership development program, which
that's
is
right.
what? Explain
Yeah.
what that is to us.
So the way this works, imagine giving someone an offer, but they don't start for a year. That's what we do, because I have to go back to school. So we have to forecast what jobs are we going to have open, and we have to be very strategic about when people are going to move in and out of jobs, but also recognize it could be dynamic. It could change. Like, there are going to be some things that change. So I got an offer but didn't know where I was going. So for me, when I was in school, I knew, like, my non-negotiables were, I wanted to join a big company. I wanted to learn from the best. And then I also uh, wanted to do a leadership development program. So these large companies do these leadership development programs where they bring you in either as an intern or as a early career professional, and then you do multiple rotations. The thought is that you get 3 different experiences supporting different groups, doing different roles. One could be an HR generalist, where you're a business partner supporting a client group. Another could be a center of excellence, where you're doing comp and ben, or talent acquisition, or talent management, or labor and employee relations, and you're supporting a corporate, functional center of excellence. And also living in different parts of the world. So I interned in Minnesota. My first role, I went to Mason, Ohio. My vice president, general manager, who I matrix reported into. So I reported into an HR person, but then my matrix manager was Joe from episode 3. That was my first rotation. And I supported a $300 million business with 850 employees, and I was the sole HR person. Think about 850 employees and the needs of that organization, whether it's hiring, whether it's firing, whether it's talent development, whether it's career pathing, whether it's issues with the customer. We're not growing. We have to double our sales team. We need a new me and Joe completely transformed our leadership team. It was a lot of work.
Okay,
It
wait.
was,
So this
yeah,
is this is literally, you had 3 months of experience at
yep,
this point. This was three
correct.
months of internship HR experience, and now you said an 850 million.
850 head count, $300
Oh,
million business. Yeah,
$300 million business, 3 months of experience. How are you feeling?
fraud. Yeah, it was hard. It was scary. At times, I didn't really think it was real. I was like, "Are you sure you want me doing this?" Joe was an incredible leader. I had great HR support from my leaders. They essentially empowered me my first day. They're like, "Look, this is your first job. We recognize that. It's a lot. We're going to have your back no matter what. And no matter how bad you screw up, we got your back." I made some really great relationships, but It was
And
hard.
from what I'm remembering from Joe, he was saying that, hey, they were looking for somebody else and they said, sorry, Joe, we're kind of tight on people or something, and you're getting a newbie, basically. So
That's
it
right.
wasn't something that this was one of those things that you luck of the draw. You got put into this position. It wasn't like you went for this specific role at this specific place.
Yeah. There was really no plan B. I couldn't fail. I had to deliver, and it was hard, but I did. I survived, and I grew so much. But everything was harder for me because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how processes work. I didn't know how to use the tools. So just kind of grasp volume here. Like a lot of my peers at other companies or even within Honeywell, there were folks that they're supporting less than 100 people. Just think of like volume of all the things that you do in your job and then times that by 8. Like that's the level of volume that I had to learn. And so it was hard, but because of that, I just had to organize and prioritize work. And one of the big there was we Joe and I hired this big engineering leader. It was a turning point in our my time in that business. I had to build that relationship with Joe. Look, you go listen to episode 3. He's literally been a U.S. diplomat. He's been a general manager of multi 9-figure businesses on 4 different continents. And then this Hayden guy shows up, the freshman, just graduated college, doesn't know how anything works, and I'm supposed to give Joe advice and counsel and be his business partner. So early on, I had to prove it and I had to earn his respect. But then, as we talked about in episode 3, he coined me his wartime consigliere, which to this day is one of my greatest. I take that with a lot of pride, but he would take me to customers with him. Now, it's not unbelievably common for HR folks to go and visit and meet external customers, but for me, first role, I wanted to go and see the employees where they sat. We had about 400 of that 850 sat at big distribution centers out all over the country. So think of Amazon, Home Depot, all these folks. We have a team of folks that service their distribution center. So if our equipment breaks, they go in and fix it. And I wanted to go meet them. I wanted to go see what they did, what their day-to-day looked like. And also I wanted to learn the business. So I would go and he would take me with him to visit customers. But what was hard was I had so much volume of tactical stuff to do that it felt like I couldn't go on those trips. And this engineering leader I hired, she taught me, she's like, Hayden, the tactical will always be there. You have to give yourself permission to make time for the strategic stuff. You coming and meeting these customers is strategic, and you need to make time for that. And the tactical stuff can be put on hold, at least temporarily. And so
Ooh,
I think prioritization was a big thing that I learned in my first role.
okay. So many questions that I want to double click on because I think what really resonates, anybody who's starting a new job in any way, and you had to do this through the leadership development program, you're rotating through all of these different jobs. So you're having a restart every single time with the limited experience that you've had. This is the key moment where we're feeling like, can I do this? This is our fraud moment. Like, okay, we're in it and now we got to go. So you, two things you said were that you had to jump in to try to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
Because you've done this multiple times and you've had so many roles in the last however many years, what have you come up with some kind of system of like, okay, this is what I do when I get into a new role? And then part two of that question is you said that you had to prove it. So when you say prove it, it's almost like this feeling of you're rising up to the calling.
Yeah.
I'm curious what that rising up looks like in your mind if there was like a process or a system, or how did you prove it?
Yeah, great questions. So the first one, do I have some sort of a system on just like getting all this work done and diving in and learning in a new role? And I would say, first off, I just started a new role. Uh, this is my second director role 8 weeks ago, and I'm still feeling that imposter syndrome. I'm still feeling like I got to prove myself. I'm still feeling like uncomfortable. And I didn't think that it would always be there, but it is. So make sure you're not too hard on yourself and give yourself grace. The great thing about as you continue to grow in your career is all of the experiences that you have become a tool. So think of your career as a tool box, and each new role, especially if you're doing different roles like I did in a leadership development program, having different tools in your tool belt, you can now apply those tools to add value in different situations. So in my third role, I supported corporate finance. Right now, I'm supporting corporate engineering and product management, and they're different. They care about different things, but I can use some of the tools that I did for the finance role in the role that I'm in now, and then just sprinkle the commercial engineering flavor on it. The other thing I would say is building relationships has been a huge piece for me. Right now, 7 years into the company, if there's something that I need done or a question that I have, I know who to go to. In an organization that has 100,000 employees, it can feel like you know nobody. But in building relationships, that has been a game changer for me. That not only building relationships and make sure people know me, but building a good relationship so that they trust me. And I have allies in every role I go to, of like people I can trust, maybe people I can vent to, but also being able to have that closed door conversation. I really love the game Survivor. I'm going to be on it one day. I can't wait to compete. Jeff
You're
Probst
gonna be on
is the
it?
best game show host, hands down, outside of the guy on Traders. But in the game Survivor, you really need to know who your allies are. And sometimes corporate America can feel that way because there are times when things can get political and dynamic and scary, and you don't know who you can trust. And so, allies, and making sure that as you go through different experiences, you remember those tool belts and add them to your toolkit and apply it to different roles. And then the second piece, this idea of rising up, that's tough. I feel like in every role, a little bit, that I've always been an underdog. So you might see the headline of this episode and it's like intern to director, the number one pick. Nope. Couldn't be further from the truth. I only got one offer. Most of my peers in Brooke and I's class got multiple offers. They chose. I didn't. I got one offer. I went and didn't really knew how I fit in. So I felt that as I started my career. And then I realized that I could build really genuine, authentic relationships. I could read people really well. And I can also build credibility and influence leaders that are extremely senior. So think about me finishing grad school. I'm like 24 years old. I'm sitting at a leadership table with everyone twice my age that has 20 or 25 plus more years of experience than I do. And I have to find a way to add value in that setting. Talk about feeling like a fraud, eh? I mean, that's tough. Or presenting in front of that audience. Like, those are the moments when you grow up. Those are the moments when it's like, let's play loose and give it our best shot. But it's challenging and it's stressful and there's fear. I'm still on this journey, recognizing that I can get better. I'm not going to be perfect at every single thing. And then the last thing I would say is two parts. One, celebrate. Let's work hard, play hard. If we have a win, celebrate that. Honeywell's a performance culture. We always have been, always will be. And it can feel like, what have you done for me lately? But as HR, being the tip of the spear when it comes to culture, it is up to us to ensure that we celebrate people, that we pause for applause, that we give credit where credit is due. And then, yes, let's go push the standard higher, but let's also celebrate those wins. And then the second piece is check in on people. I don't think we do it enough. When the one-on-one is done and you've gotten all the things checked off and you've got 3 minutes left in the meeting, do you just end the call or do you say, no, Brooke, how you doing? No, really though, you just started a new role. How you doing? That is how I build relationships and credibility with people, is leveraging. It can be 3 minutes long, but I think that has been a huge takeaway in my career of how I've continued to move up and then kind of risen throughout my career so far.
I love this. And you actually practice what you preach because you do this all the time. I witness you doing it with me and with other people that have come on. Okay, so this was your first job straight out of your internship in the leadership development program. After this, you had two more roles in the leadership development program. Can you give us high level what those roles were, how you were able to navigate the changes, not only changes in work, but in job, people, and what your takeaways were as you were building relationships throughout the organization?
Yeah, there were two more roles left in the program. At the time, I was dating this beautiful North Carolina Tar Heel Sheila that was living in Tennessee at the time. So we were dating long distance and we needed to bring our homes together. So she was working at a company that only had like one location in Tennessee. I was working at Honeywell. Honeywell announced they were moving their headquarters from Morris Plains, New Jersey to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is 2.5 hours from where she's from. We made the decision to both move to Charlotte. I ended up getting a job, and then she found a new job at Bank of America, which was awesome. I say that, and I think that's important because, again, when we think about from a career development perspective, it's not just Hayden and the decisions I make and the results of Hayden that drive my career. There's also life. And that was a pivotal moment, right? Because there could have been multiple ways we navigated that. We decided it was best for us in starting our marriage to move to Charlotte and for me to stay at Honeywell. And it just happened to be that Honeywell wanted to move their headquarters there. So I got a job as we actually created an internal McKinsey team. The thought was that instead of paying external consultants millions of dollars who don't know who we are, let's build our own. We got the talent internally. Let's build our own team. So we built a Honeywell HR McKinsey. We called it the SWAT team. And I was the one of the first hires for that team. I was an org design consultant. So we were literally created a team of 6 people. We were created to drive transformational change across Honeywell. And that role was awesome because it was, or like now, instead of an HR generalist, which was my first role supporting a business and a client group, I'm now a center of excellence. And I am the org design, that's what OD stands for, org design consultant, where I'm facilitating workshops with some of the most senior leaders in our company. I'm driving strategy. I'm pushing back. Instead of as an HR generalist, your work is making sure your inbox is clean. As a center of excellence person, it's driving strategic value through your projects. And then I transitioned to go back to the HR generalist space for my third role, where I got a role supporting global corporate finance and ended up doing some talent management work for our chief financial officer, our CFO, got a lot of visibility with him and his leadership team. My boss was the VP of HR for global finance. She left the company, and our CFO actually asked me to be interim vice president of HR for all of global finance for Honeywell while they were searching for her backfill. So
Hayden, I
I did
had no
that
idea
for
about
3
this.
months. Yeah, that was when I was a third rotation as a in the leadership development program. So again, like that's the level of trust that they've had, but also like next man up, you know? And they asked me to do it and the team like
Were you blindsided by that? Did you see that coming?
not
I,
really.
I
No.
I'm just picturing an email that's like, hey, will you be the interim
Yeah.
VP?
Yeah, it was a conversation, but it was both my HR leader at the time and the CFO. They asked me to do this. Yeah, I was holding the fort down until we got a new HR VP that was hired, and she became my boss. And so again, a great experience. And
But wait,
then
hold on. We can't
yeah,
skip over this part. I know that
yeah,
we're already, but this stuff is gold because you have to understand you're not ready for these opportunities. It's like when the opportunity knocks, are you going to say yes or no? And so many times, as soon as you get the call or the opportunity for something that's going to change your life, your experience, your career, whatever it is, there's a tiny little voice. Did you have the tiny little voice situation that's like, can I do this? Or what was that feeling? Were you at a place where you had enough support that it wasn't as bad?
100% I had that voice, and I was like, what? Like, this is it. This is how the ship's gonna sink. Is Hayden's gonna fail as some interim VP, and something's gonna be wrong. And I think that moment was really pivotal for me because up until that point, I've had stretch roles, I've had challenging assignments, but that role was the first time that I was like, if they are asking me to do this and they know I'm going to fail, then that's their problem. But they're asking me to do this, so I'm confident that they believe that I can do it. And then I believed I could do it. But inside I was petrified. But it ended up being a great experience. I literally ended up presenting in our CFO's global town hall for all finance. Like, I was doing the
Wow.
HR VP presentation. I was facilitating Q&A, and yeah, it was a big moment for me, but a big lesson of I can do this. I can do anything. Let's go.
I'm just hearing this theme of at every moment and every opportunity. I know we blazed past so many of your other roles, but you put yourself in a situation that you had never done before, but you were willing to put yourself in that situation and you were willing to accept a call that was scary despite the, okay, this is how the ship is going to sink.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still going to do it.
That's definitely been a huge theme in my career.
Wow. Okay. So, VP, interim VP, then you get your new boss, they hire the new VP, then what?
I
What
got
title was that after?
That was a senior HR generalist in my third rotation. And then I was interim VP. We hired my new boss, so I onboarded her. And then I got promoted to support similar groups, still reporting to that leader, and I became a manager. And then at the end of that role, so a lot of similar work, a lot of really strategic talent management initiatives and HR generalist work in corporate finance. And then
Well, when you say
um,
manager, clarify because this can mean so many different things. Like
yeah,
manager over programs, systems, processes versus manager of people.
yeah. I didn't have any direct reports. Our HR, like our corporate HR organization, is relatively lean. So all of the teams supporting our corporate finance all reported into the VP of HR. But it's just a higher level. So it was a more challenging client group. The expectations are higher. So it's just a higher level of work and expectation supporting a similar team.
I
Yeah,
see.
good
Wow.
clarification. At the end, I was in that role for like a year and a half, and I had my mid year review with that new HR VP of finance that was hired. And her boss had an opening on her team of a director position, which is essentially like her chief of staff position. And in my mid year, I brought this up to my boss. I was like, hey, I'm not really sure what's next for me. I've graduated the program. This is my first role outside of the leadership development program. here's a couple of ideas of things that I'm interested in doing next, one of which being this chief of staff role. And then literally that week I had an offer, which I don't really like talking about this, but it generally, the standard career trajectory is you move up kind of one level at a time. So you go like HRG, senior HRG, manager, senior manager, director, senior director, VP. That's kind of your typical corporate America career trajectory. Um, this was a manager to director move. And
Jeez.
again, it was another one of those moments where it's like, hey, like I got the offer and I said, are you sure? And she's like, why? Are you scared? Because you shouldn't be. And I was like, no, it was very similar to Joe's quote in episode 3, where he's like, if you're not afraid to give it to me, I'm not afraid to take it. That was essentially like what I said, but that was my first director move. And yeah.
This is huge because what I love about this story is that you had an idea of where you wanted to go. Like you knew that you were in the right spot. You had been putting yourself in situations and scenarios where you're building skills, you're building relationships. Then you had an idea of, okay, here's where I want to go. Here's an option of one of the things that I want to do. And
Yeah.
instead of sitting in a space where I've sat personally before and other people that I've spoken with, like, oh, I would love to do this someday. But this is what it's going to take for me to get there. And you said, usually the progression looks like this if you're watching the video. Looks
Yeah.
like first here, then here's the next step, and it takes 3 or 4 more steps to get to director. You spoke your desire to somebody else. That's the first step I've always noticed is if you can speak the things that you want to somebody else, an ally, whoever it is, then doors start to open. And that's what happened to you. You spoke it, you had enough courage. That person, you'd built a relationship with them enough that they then said, hey, this would be a great option. And then you get an offer.
Yeah. So far, every single role that I have been in, this is now my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, my 7th role in 7 years at Honeywell. Every job except for my internship, which was assigned, and my first role that was assigned, all of the other jobs, I have proactively been involved in the creation of either the role or the idea of me being in the role. I think my experience in talking with students, early career and mid career professionals, they just kind of expect some job fairy to show up and wave their magic wand and be like, yep, put me in the role. And that's not how this works, especially at these big companies. You got to know what you want. You got to say it. You need to tell somebody, you need to make that relationship. You need to say, this is what I want to do. Now, if you don't know, that is also okay. But don't communicate that as, yep, I have no idea what I want to do next, full stop. Big mistake. You as an employee, having that discussion, that means there's somebody in leadership that cares about what to do next. And you are now giving them the information that they can go have with other leaders to potentially think about your succession and what you could be doing next. If you don't know, list 3 ideas. That's what I've done, is where I've been in like a career spunk, if you will, and I don't know what's next for me. I've communicated, here, this is my view of my career so far. Here's where I want to get to. Here's 3 ideas that I have that I could do next that could help me get there. That is way more productive than saying, I don't know what I want to do next. You tell me. That's not helpful at all.
Yeah, I love that. I remember being fresh out of after my internship and still figuring out what kind of role as I was working in corporate America. And I had a fear of actually bringing that up to my leadership of like, they put me in this role as my first job. I accepted the job and I really didn't like it that much. But I was afraid to say that. I was afraid to say,
Yeah.
I'd actually be interested in doing something else. There's a level of vulnerability because then I was thinking, I don't want them to think that I'm ungrateful or that I'm like I had some fear that they were just going to fire me because it's like, okay, you don't want this role, fine, you're disposable. So I was so afraid to say, this is what I'm interested in next. Do you think that that was you? Because you said the words that you were proactively involved in creating these things. Was it that the culture was such that you felt like you could have those conversations? Or is that something that you just said, look, I'm going to own this piece. I'm just going to be honest about this is what I want to do next and the things that I like or don't like. Share a little bit more.
It's the latter. Part of it is a Honeywell thing. We're always talking about talent and succession planning and what roles, we're going to do next. And especially in HR, it's like what we do. It's like in our DNA as HR folks. But every year, as part of the leadership development program, we had an annual summit. And anytime you'd ask a question, you'd raise your hand, you'd say your name, and then you'd say what role you're in. And there was one moment the entire HR leadership team was in the room. And I stood up, I raised my hand, I asked a question, I introduced the role, the $300 million business and the 850 employees. And they would start laughing because they knew what a tough environment it was. And they would literally stop and before answering my question, start laughing and be like, Hayden, it's going to be okay. But like, thank you so much for what you're doing. Like, so I felt like I really built confidence as I went through the journey. With my first 3 roles, the tools I have in my toolkit, they're pretty good tools. I'm not saying I can solve every problem that there is, but to have 3 roles so far and to have the 3 experiences that I did, I'm ready to go. And so it really helped me build this confidence. And then I also think that no one is necessarily going to sell Hayden unless I'm comfortable selling Hayden first. I have to tell people how to sell Hayden by telling people what I want to do and how I can add value and why I would be a good fit in the role. In a lot of my interviews, I actually present a presentation of why I should get the job. I literally put together a deck of here's how I would add value to this role. It's not a wait till they ask you a question, then answer. Be like, hey, I have a couple slides. Can I walk you through them? Like, this is how I view this role and how I can add value. Be proactive.
I love that. I actually would love, we should do some kind of YouTube video, maybe of you sharing how you would present this kind of thing. It would never come to my mind preparing a PowerPoint presentation on why I should get the role. That sounds legit. You could teach
Yeah,
a class on that. I would love to hear that. But yes, we're going to wrap up here in a second and kind of hear about your last role and any takeaways that you'd love to share. The theme that I'm hearing is there is such beauty and development in having different experiences. Now, like you said at the beginning, not everybody's role is the same. So if you are a mid-career professional or you're in a job right now and your business and company does not have an LDP and you're like, okay, well, how does this apply and how am I going to do? What I'm thinking right now is I can literally create an LDP for myself, a leadership development
100%.
program for myself, whether it's official or not. So what areas or things am I interested in that I would love to learn about? What would help me become a better leader or improve on this skill? And maybe it's a course that I take externally. Maybe it's a book that I start studying, and maybe I find somebody who's really good at XYZ thing. And then I want to be mentored by them within my organization or outside of my organization. But I think what was so valuable is that you had this experience that was built in. Let's build that for ourselves. Let's build an LDP leadership development program for ourselves and expose ourselves to these different situations, ask for the things that we want. And that creates an incredible growth trajectory.
I love it. I think that's perfect. If you work at a company where they don't do leadership development programs, to Brooke's point, you can 100% build your own, right? Think of the company and the rules and the titles and all that stuff. Think of that as like the rules of the sport. So that's like the penalties in football, but you get to call the plays. You get to say like what you want to do. Do you want to run the ball or pass the ball on first down? You, as the employee, get to call the plays within the confines of the rules and the policies that your company sets. But in general, I feel that folks are way too passive when they think about their career. They don't reflect enough. And so then when they're at these cocktail parties or these dinner parties and the big leader asks them what they want to do next, they haven't thought about it. You just missed a huge opportunity to share with someone who can actually help you get there. What, where do you want to go? And how can I help you get there? Is it a introduction to somebody? Is it maybe it's a role on my team? So I just think that like, be assertive. Don't be afraid to go after what you want because no one's going to do it for you. And so if you don't have an LDP and what Brooke and I are talking about and like the experience that I've had, you can make that yourself. And in some cases, it might be, I really want this experience, but the company that I'm working at cannot offer that. So either to Brooke's point, I go take some training externally, or I go get another job with a different company, or I go start my own business. You get to pick that. But if you don't know what you want to do and you don't know what your next role is and how to get there, then we can't get there, right? You need to know that first in order for you to help yourself and others around you to help you too.
Okay, Hayden. So to wrap this up, is there anything else that you would like to share, just highlighting this whole career journey that you've had? Now you're in this director role, and any last pieces of advice or lessons learned that you'd love to give to us as we are in our own career journey?
I'll give you my 4 big takeaways. Number 1, every role, I like to think about my resume as Hayden's on SportsCenter. And every bullet point on my resume is Hayden's top 10 plays. And the number 1 play for each role should be the number 1 bullet, right? The average resume is looked at 7 seconds, so you want the good stuff up top. But when you're in your role, think about making those plays. If you're doing stuff that is not having a big impact, you, again, be assertive on how can I get involved in doing something that would make a SportsCenter top 10 play. Okay, it could be a bubble assignment, but I love this idea of leaving the Hayden legacy in every role that I'm in. I hate the idea of taking the baton from somebody else, just carrying it a little bit further down the trail and then handing it to somebody else. No. How is this business or this role or this organization or this leader, how are they better because Hayden was in this role? That's how I've thought about my roles. Second bullet is when I was supporting our CFO, he was very impactful in my career. But one of the things he said is, don't be an HR person. Be a business leader that happens to be in an HR role. I love that. That's how I approach my roles. I don't want to show up and be the HR person doing HR crap. I want to be a business leader that's a true like thought partner, wartime consigliere that just happens to be in an HR role. My third one is, this one is tricky as you continue to move up, but building relationships up, down, and sideways. There are folks, the higher up you go, that only are good up, but they're terrible down and even worse sideways. There are some that are only good down, but they're really bad up and they don't really talk to their peers. And then there are some people that suck up and down and only good sideways. In order for you to navigate a highly matrixed corporate environment with 100,000 employees, you need good relationships of folks above you, folks below you, level-wise, or maybe direct reports, and also peers. If you have all 3 of those groups, good relationships in those 3 groups, you'll be a lot more effective, and that will also help you be a better leader than if you don't. And then the last piece is always having an opinion and being okay to give feedback. Think if you're sitting in a meeting, again, remember, I was the 24-year-old kid sitting at the table with a full leadership team of folks that were twice my age and experience. What if Hayden was asked his thoughts? Do I have an answer right now? If not, I should have something ready, either a question to ask or some feedback to give, or hey, I'm the new guy. What does this mean? Could someone like walk me through this? And you don't necessarily have to do that publicly, but I've also in my new role, I'm partnering very closely with our chief technology officer, and we've had multiple one-on-one conversations where he's like, "What's your feedback? What are your thoughts?" I have to have an answer. I do you have an opinion? Do you have feedback to give? Do you have questions? If not, you need to think more about this and get feedback, get an opinion prepared so that you're ready to go and build on your brand.
Hayden, you're awesome. It's inspiring to hear. I've known you for how long, but this is my first time hearing start to finish these pieces, and I'm so impressed. I've learned so much today. I love the one phrase that you said about being strategic. You talked about you wanted to go out and meet with the people. You've talked a lot about relationships. We've seen how that's been a key thing in your career growth. But the phrase that was make time for this, the tactical will always be here. Make time for the strategic things. It's such a good reminder, not only in business, but in life. Sometimes the things that feel like, oh, we could probably pass on that. Like there's so much work. Just keep your head down, keep grinding. We need to finish X, Y, and Z things. Remembering that those are strategic moves to go out, take care of the people, remember the people, and that
Yeah,
will always, always help you. So thank you. I learned so much today.
that's awesome. Thanks, Brooke.
All right, you guys, that's it. If you want to connect with Hayden, you can find him on LinkedIn. You can find him on Instagram. Okay,
Or
I'm starting.
message the pod. Message the pod, right?
Message the pod, you guys.
Follow, like, subscribe. Go check us out on YouTube. Give us a comment. Brooke and I will respond to all comments. So let us know your thoughts.
We love you guys. For now, that's the pod.